Hello and welcome to the studio. Today we're here to discuss a new book by Anne-Mary Patterson, and that book is Lairds in Waiting. Now, I'm really pleased to be joined by Anne-Mary to have a quick discussion about the book. So, Anne-Mary, welcome to the studio.
Hello, yes.
Hello. So, for anybody who hasn't yet read the book, just give us a thumbnail. What is the book about? What are the Lairds waiting for?
It's about private stations and private waiting rooms in the Highland Railway, and there's a private waiting room at my own local station, Bewley, and it's always intrigued me to know more about it and about the stations, about the private stations and waiting rooms. I mean, I knew about Dunrobin Castle station for the Duke of Sutherland, but I didn't know the background to it.
So this
I
does
thought it would be
sound
interesting to look into this.
absolutely. I mean, for those of us who are used to the only demarcation being between a first-class lounge and everybody else's lounge, it's a real surprise to know that there are these private lounges. So, was it that the Duke of Sutherland spent so much time on the railways that he needed his own room, or was this privilege? I mean, how did these come about?
Well, the case of the Duke of Sutherland, he because he was one of the wealthiest men in Britain. This is the third Duke of Sutherland I'm talking about, not the famous Clarence first Duke of Sutherland. He was very interested in railways because he came from a family who had built canals, like the Bridgewater Canal in Staffordshire, and so he was very interested in transport, and he thought that railways were a thing of the future. And so much so that he actually went down to England and learnt quite a lot about railways and about engineering. So, and of course, being the wealthiest man in the country, he was able to finance railways and the building of railways. So there's one that's called the Duke of Sutherland's Railway. And then he put together the finance for the rest of the railway that went north to Wick and Thurso. And the case of Bewley, the Lord Lovett was director of the Highland Railway.
So you were interested in this from your own local station. So we have yours, we have the third Duke of Sutherland. Where did your investigations take you? How many of these private waiting rooms did you come across?
Well, there was 6 private waiting rooms and 4 private stations.
And so that's the content of the book. And were there any of those that surprised you or that stood out after your period of research?
Well, there was 2 that I didn't actually know about, and I was in just over a year ago. I was before the pandemic started. Before the lockdown started, I was in Glasgow helping at the Scottish Model Railway Show. And I got into conversation with a couple that came to our stand, the Highland Railway Society stand, and they told me that there had been private waiting rooms at Alness and Kildare, which are they're near Invergordon on the Cromarty Firth. And so I had to immediately start trying to look into this. So they weren't originally on the list because we didn't actually know that there had been private station rooms. Kildare station is the building is no longer there because it was demolished to make way for the A9, the main road going north.
And so if we take your book
all the station was after the station closed for a while and then reopened, and the building had to be demolished because it had been vandalized. So it's only just got a kind of bus shelter thing for people to shelter in if it's wet.
And if we follow your book, are we able to get into these? The ones obviously that haven't been demolished, are they now open to the public, or are they still under lock and key?
Well, a lot of them have, the ones that exist have all found other uses. Bewley is now part of a self-catering apartment, belongs to the people who bought, because Bewley Station closed and opened again also, but in between it was sold to, the building was sold to private people, and so it's the sitting room of a self-catering apartment.
Wow. But Anne-Mary, this interest in railways hasn't just occurred to you. You've had a long-standing interest. So perhaps you can tell us a little bit more about you and your interest in the railways.
Well, I come from a family of railway engineers. My father was a civil engineer on the railway, and he actually worked from Inverness to start with, and he trained there, and he went to and then he was moved to Glasgow when I was a small child, but my father's granduncle was Murdoch well, he had two of his granduncles were civil engineers. One was William Patterson, who he was called after, and Murdoch Patterson. And Murdoch Patterson is the most famous. He was the engineer-in-chief on the Highland Railway, and he was responsible for the building and during the building and construction of most of the railways radiating from Inverness. But his most famous works were the Culloden Viaduct, which is just outside Inverness, and the line to Carlivlough, which is now one of the great train journeys of the world. And,
yes.
And then lots of various other relations after Murdoch followed into the civil engineering profession. So
wow. And in fact, they were the subject of one of your previous books.
Yes, I wrote a biography of William and Murdoch Patterson, which was published in 2010. It's called Pioneers of the Highland Tracks.
Excellent. Well, we need to put a link to that below the video as well. But Anne-Mary, looking to the future, you're not resting on your railway laurels. You have another book project, I think you just started.
Yes, the chairman of the Highland Railway for many years was Alexander Matheson, and he was first of all, he was in China as a partner in Jardine Matheson. He was involved in the smuggling of opium into China.
Allegedly, let's not.
Allegedly. And then when he came home, he bought the. He was brought up at Attadale, which is on the Carlivlough line. There's a station still open called Attadale, and then, and after he came home, but the first estate that he bought was just outside Alness, where one of the private waiting rooms are, not for him, but for later occupants of Ardross Castle, which he built. And anyway, I'm writing a biography about him because I had to. He features in the. He also built a castle, Duncraig Castle, which is on the Cardiff-Loch line, and there's a private station called Duncraig. And actually, the cover of my book is the family waiting on the platform at Duncraig Castle Station. And so I had to find out quite a lot about him for the book. And so nobody's written anything about him. So I thought it would be interesting to do that.
So we seem to have gone all the way now from the Highland Railway heritage and some of the early pioneers through to the waiting rooms, and now to the people who had those waiting rooms themselves. So a really great journey there, Anne-Mary. So listen, thank you so much for chatting today. In case anyone didn't see the cover as you held it up there, here is the cover, which we put a link to down below. But for now, thank you very much for giving us an insight, Anne-Mary, to this book, but also a sneak preview of what's coming next. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much.